Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to explore self-awareness.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is, and it's something that comes up all the time, right? In our relationships at work, in our personal growth, it's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one.
How cool.
Yeah, we've got a research article from the Annual Review of Organizational Psychology and Organizational Behavior.
Right.
We've got a piece from Harvard Business Review. And then just for fun, we've also got a collection of self-awareness activities.
Oh, wow. So we can get practical too.
Exactly. So we're going to cover the theory and the what and the why.
Right.
But then also, how can we actually put this into practice?
Awesome.
So I think one of the things that's really interesting is that sometimes we think of self-awareness as just being about introspection.
Yeah, just looking inward, kind of.
Exactly. But these sources really highlight that it's more than that.
It is.
It's also about understanding how other people perceive us.
Oh, that's interesting.
And how we impact them.
Yeah, so it's
it's not just what's going on in here.
Right.
It's also how are we showing up in the world?
Right.
And how is that impacting other people?
That makes sense.
And I think that's such a crucial piece that sometimes gets overlooked.
I agree, because you can be really self-aware, I guess, of your own thoughts and feelings.
Right.
But if you're not aware of how that's translating to your behavior and how other people are experiencing you, then you're kind of missing a big part of the picture.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that kind of blew my mind when I was reading these sources is they talk about how we're actually pretty bad at judging ourselves accurately.
Really?
We might think we're coming across one way, but other people are seeing something completely different.
That is so true.
And I think, we've all had those moments where we've maybe gotten feedback that was whoa, I didn't realize that's how I was coming across.
Totally, like a wake-up call.
Exactly. And another research article actually mentions that there's only a small correlation between how we evaluate ourselves and how others evaluate us.
Huh.
So there's a real gap there.
Yeah.
And they use this really interesting example of leadership.
Okay.
They talk about how leaders often develop a self-perception based on their initial successes.
Oh, I see.
So, early in their career, they're doing well. They're getting positive feedback.
Right, they're killing it.
Yeah, and so they start to develop this image of themselves as being, a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
But then as they progress in their career and they face new challenges and they start getting maybe some negative feedback, they struggle to adapt.
Oh, that makes sense. They get stuck in that initial image.
Exactly, they get stuck in that image and they're not able to see themselves clearly in light of this new information.
Yeah.
And so that can really hinder their growth and development as a leader.
I see. That makes a lot of sense, because if you're not open to feedback
Yeah.
and you're not willing to kind of adjust your self-perception, then you're not going to learn from your mistakes.
Right. You're not going to be able to evolve.
Yeah,
So I think that's a really powerful example of why self-awareness is so important.
it is. And it's interesting, because sometimes we think of self-awareness as just being about us,
Right.
but it actually has a huge impact on the people around us too.
Absolutely.
Like in the workplace, for example.
Yeah, especially in teams.
Exactly. Like if you're working on a team and everyone has a good understanding of their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're aware of how they impact the team dynamics,
Yeah.
that team is going to be so much more effective.
It's like they're all playing their part.
Right. And they know how to work together.
Yeah, and they can kind of anticipate each other's moves and, it just makes the whole thing flow so much smoother.
Totally.
But on the flip side, if that team lacks self-awareness,
Uh-oh.
that's when you start to see conflicts arise.
Oh, yeah.
People aren't communicating effectively, projects might fail.
Right, because they're not leveraging their strengths.
Exactly. And, it can just create a lot of unnecessary stress and frustration for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So I think that's another really powerful example of why self-awareness is so important.
Yeah. And, it's not just about being aware of our own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
It's also about being aware of our impact on others and how we can adjust our behavior to be more effective in our interactions.
Exactly.
And that's a process.
It is.
It's not something that just happens overnight.
Yeah, it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. And what's interesting is this research article also talks about the dark side of self-awareness.
Oh, that sounds ominous.
I know, right?
Like too much self-awareness can be a bad thing?
Yeah, it can be.
Is that even possible?
It is.
Wow.
And it's not so much about the amount of self-awareness,
Okay.
but more about how we use it.
Oh, interesting.
So if we're constantly focusing on our flaws or our mistakes, and we're not balancing that with self-compassion and action,
Right.
then it can actually lead to rumination and anxiety.
So it's like we're just stuck in our heads.
Yeah, and we're not moving forward.
We're just overthinking everything.
Exactly. And, the article uses this analogy of a white-knuckle alcoholic.
Okay.
So this is someone who is painfully aware of their addiction,
Uh-huh.
but they're struggling to take positive action.
So they're aware, but they're not doing anything about it.
Exactly. And so that awareness is actually causing them more pain.
Wow. That's a really powerful image.
It is.
And it makes sense, if we're just constantly focused on what's wrong with us,
Right.
and we're not taking any steps to change,
Yeah.
then it's not really helpful.
It's not.
It's just going to make us feel worse.
Right. And so the key is to find that balance between self-reflection and action.
Yeah.
And to use that self-awareness to make positive changes in our lives.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
Good.
So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork and we understand what self-awareness is, both the good and the bad, I guess,
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
let's dive into how we can actually use this knowledge to become better versions of ourselves.
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay, so like we were saying, it's one thing to know what self-awareness is,
Right.
but then how do we actually use it, to make positive changes?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
It is. Like, how do we bridge that gap between awareness and action?
Well, the Harvard Business Review article actually has this really helpful framework.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they talk about this 4-step process for self-management.
Okay, so self-management. So this is like taking that self-awareness and putting it into action.
Exactly. It's like the bridge between knowing yourself and doing something about it.
Okay, I'm liking this already.
Yeah, so step 1,
Hit me.
being present.
Okay, so like mindfulness, basically.
Yeah, kinda. But more than just like being in the moment.
Okay.
It's about really paying attention to the situation you're in.
Uh-huh.
The people around you, your own thoughts and feelings, like everything.
So it's like being fully aware of what's going on both internally and externally.
Exactly, because if you're not present, you can't even begin to manage your behavior effectively.
Right. It's like trying to drive a car with your eyes closed. You need to be aware of your surroundings to make good decisions.
Exactly. So once you're present,
Okay.
step 2 is self-awareness.
Okay, so that's where we bring in all that knowledge we were just talking about.
Right. It's about recognizing how you typically react in certain situations.
So like knowing your triggers.
Yeah, your patterns, your blind spots, all that good stuff.
Okay, so let's say, for example, I tend to get really defensive when I receive feedback.
Probably a classic example.
Yeah, so that would be my self-awareness red flag.
Exactly. You're recognizing that tendency in yourself.
Oh, okay, so I'm present. I'm aware now. What?
Step 3 is identifying choices.
Oh, okay. So instead of just reacting automatically.
Right, you're giving yourself options.
Okay, so in my feedback example, instead of getting defensive, I could choose to.
Take a deep breath,
Okay.
ask clarifying questions,
Mm-hmm.
or even just thank the person for their feedback.
So I'm extending my repertoire of responses.
Exactly. You're not stuck in that old pattern.
I love that.
Yeah. And then step 4 is the big one, choosing the most productive response.
So actually doing it.
Exactly, putting it into action.
Okay, so even though my instinct might be to get defensive,
Right.
I'm going to consciously choose to respond in a more constructive way.
Exactly. You're taking control of your behavior.
I like it.
Yeah. And this might feel uncomfortable at first,
Oh, I'm sure it will.
but that's okay. It's like building a muscle.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And over time, it'll become more natural.
Okay, so we've got the 4 steps.
We do.
But I'm also wondering, how do we actually make these changes stick?
Right. How do we go from theory to practice?
Exactly, because I can read about this stuff all day long.
Yeah.
But if I'm not actually putting it into practice, it's not going to do me any good.
Right. And that's where those self-awareness activities come in.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about those earlier.
Yeah, this guide has some really practical exercises that you can use to strengthen your self-awareness and self-management muscles.
Okay, give me some examples. I'm ready to get practical.
All right, how about journaling?
Okay, I love journaling.
It's a great tool for self-reflection.
It is, and it doesn't have to be super complicated.
Right. Just a few minutes each day can make a big difference.
Exactly, and the guide actually provides some prompts to get you started.
Oh, cool. Like what?
So one of them is, what are 3 things you're grateful for today?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's so powerful.
It is, because it helps you focus on the positive.
Right, and it kind of shifts your perspective.
Exactly.
Another one is, what are 3 things you did well today?
Oh, I like that one too.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself a little pat on the back.
It is, and we all need that sometimes.
We do.
Right.
And then there's one that's a little bit more challenging.
Ooh, okay. Tell me more.
What's one thing you could have done differently today, and how?
That's a good one for self-reflection.
It is. It makes you think about your actions and how you could have handled things better.
And it's not about beating yourself up.
Right. It's about learning from your mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay, so journaling is definitely going on my list.
Good.
What else you got?
How about trying new things outside your comfort zone?
Okay, so like taking a dance class?
Sure. Or giving a presentation at work.
Or even just talking to a stranger.
Exactly. It's about pushing yourself a little bit.
Yeah, and seeing how you react in those unfamiliar situations.
Right. Because you never know what you might discover about yourself.
You might surprise yourself.
You might. And you'll definitely grow from the experience.
I love that.
And of course, as you're trying new things, it's important to take the time to reflect.
Yeah, like what did you learn?
Right. How did it make you feel?
What would you do differently next time?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got journaling, we've got trying new things. Anything else?
Well, the guide also talks about the power of positive affirmations.
Okay, so like those little pep talks we give ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And they can be really effective.
I know some people think they're cheesy,
I know.
but I've actually found them to be really helpful.
Me too.
It's like you're reprogramming your brain.
You're replacing those negative thoughts with positive ones.
Exactly, and over time, it really can make a difference.
It can.
Okay, so positive affirmations are going on the list too.
Good.
And I think the last one we should mention is seeking feedback from others.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It is, because sometimes we need that outside perspective to see ourselves more clearly.
We do. We all have blind spots.
We do.
And it's hard to see them on our own.
It's like having a friend hold up a mirror and be like, hey, have you noticed this?
Exactly.
And it's important to choose the right people for this.
That's
like
right.
people who are supportive but also honest.
Right. Someone who will tell you the truth, even if it's tough to hear.
But we'll do it in a way that's kind and constructive.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a lot of great tools and strategies.
It is.
And you know, I think the key is to find what works for you.
Yeah. Experiment a little bit.
Exactly, and be patient with yourself.
Because self-awareness is a journey.
It is.
It's not a destination.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We talked about what self-awareness is, why it's important, the potential downsides, and some practical strategies for developing it.
We did. And I think we even managed to make it fun.
I think we did. I hope so anyway.
Me too.
But you know, there's one area that I'm curious to explore a little further.
Oh, okay. What's that?
I'm thinking about the impact of culture and social media on how we see ourselves.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. Like, I was reading that in some cultures, self-promotion is seen as like you're bragging.
Oh, yeah.
But in other cultures, it's like expected.
It's like you got to do it.
Yeah. And if you don't, you're seen as like not confident or something.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm wondering, like, how do those cultural differences impact our self-awareness?
That's a great question. And, you know, the research article actually talks about that.
Oh, it does.
It does. Yeah. It talks about how societal culture can shape our self-perceptions in some really profound ways.
So it's not just about like our individual experiences.
Right. It's also about the messages we receive from our culture.
Yeah, like what's valued and what's not.
Exactly. And those messages can influence everything from how we communicate to how we seek feedback to how we define success.
Wow. So it's like this whole other layer of self-awareness.
It is. And it's something that we need to be aware of, especially in today's world.
Right, because we're interacting with people from all different cultures.
Exactly. And if we're not sensitive to those cultural differences, it can lead to misunderstandings
Oh, for sure.
and even conflicts.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important point. Like, we need to be aware of our own cultural biases and how they might be impacting our perceptions of ourselves and others.
Right. And, you know, this is especially important when it comes to things like feedback,
Oh, yeah.
because the way we give and receive feedback can vary widely across cultures.
It's true.
So, for example, in some cultures, direct feedback is seen as helpful.
Like, just tell it like it is.
Exactly. But in other cultures, it's considered rude.
Oh, wow. So you have to be really careful.
You have to be aware of the cultural context
Right.
and adjust your approach accordingly.
Okay, so we've got culture, and then, of course, we have to talk about social media.
Oh, yeah, the elephant in the room.
It is because, let's be honest, social media has a huge impact on how we see ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
Like, we're constantly bombarded with images of other people's seemingly perfect lives.
Right. And it's easy to start comparing ourselves.
Oh, it's so easy, and then we start feeling inadequate.
Yeah, like we're not good enough.
Exactly. And you know, the research actually shows that there's a link between social media use and increased anxiety and depression.
Wow, that's scary.
It is, and I think it's because social media often creates this distorted view of reality.
Right. It's like this highlight reel of everyone's best moments.
Exactly, and we forget that everyone has struggles and challenges.
We do. We only see the good stuff.
And so we start to feel like we're the only ones who aren't perfect.
Yeah. And that's just not true.
It's not. Everyone has their stuff.
Everyone does.
So I think it's important to be mindful of our social media use
Uh-huh.
and to be aware of how it's impacting our self-esteem.
Right. And if you find that it's making you feel bad,
Yeah.
take a break.
Unfollow those accounts that are triggering you
Exactly.
and focus on following accounts that make you feel good.
Right. That inspire you.
Yeah, and that make you feel connected.
Exactly. Because social media can be a great tool for connection,
It can.
but it can also be a source of stress and anxiety.
Right. It's all about how we use it.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about culture, we've talked about social media.
We have.
Is there anything else we need to consider when it comes to self-awareness?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about much is teams.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Like, how do those team dynamics impact our self-awareness?
Right, because we're not just individuals operating in a vacuum.
Exactly. We're part of groups and teams.
And those relationships can have a huge impact on how we see ourselves.
They can, for sure.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, one thing that the research article emphasizes is the importance of psychological safety within teams.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, admitting their mistakes.
Without fear of judgment.
Exactly.
And so when you have that psychological safety, people are more likely to be vulnerable.
They are.
They're more likely to take risks.
And they're more likely to give and receive feedback constructively.
Right, because they know that they're not going to be punished for making a mistake.
Exactly. And that's where real growth happens.
It is when we can learn from our mistakes.
And support each other's development.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really important thing for leaders to keep in mind.
It is like, how can we create that psychological safety within our teams?
Right. Because it's not something that just happens naturally.
No, it takes effort.
It takes intentionality.
Okay, well, I think that's a great place to wrap up.
I agree.
We've covered so much ground today.
We have.
We talked about what self-awareness is, why it's important, the potential downsides, and some practical strategies for developing it.
We did.
We also explored the impact of culture and social media and the importance of psychological safety in teams.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive helpful.
We do.
Remember, self-awareness is a journey, not a destination.
That's right.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing.
And most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
Absolutely well said. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, keep diving deep